All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mussar Mondays is officially back. It's very exciting to be back here with all of you. We are now 2 weeks after, since our last class, because we had 2 weeks off for Pesach, and I hope all of you had a magnificent Pesach. It's really exciting to be back here to study Mussar, take time every single week to enhance our character, and become the best possible people we can be. Now, just as a preface again, for those who are starting anew with the Mussar programs, I just want to remind you, the fact that I'm teaching these lessons does not indicate in any way that I am perfect in any of these. It just means that I want to be perfect in these traits. It does not indicate in any way that I am superior to anyone in these traits. I don't feel like I'm worthy. It's just we're learning here collectively as a family, and we really have become a family in this class, to learn and become the greatest people we can be. So with that, the topic today is judging people favorably. So we know the Torah tells us, "B'tzedek tishpot amitecha," you shall judge your fellow with tzedek. With tzedek means with justice. Okay? It also says, "Hevidan et kol ha'adam lekaf zechut." The Mishnah tells us in chapter 1, Mishnah 6, in Ethics of Our Fathers, in Pirkei Avot, you shall judge. Now there are two translations to this. Okay, there's the careful one and there's the not so careful one. The not so careful one is, "Hevidan et kol ha'adam lekaf zechut." You should judge every person favorably. But if you look at those words very, very carefully, it's going to give a very, very big answer to the big question of how to do it. And we'll get to it in a minute. Okay? Okay, so the first thing we need to understand is that King David in Psalms 34, verse 13 says the following. Mi ha'ish hachafetz chayim ohev yamin lir'ot tov. Who is the man who desires life? Ohev yamim, loves days of seeing good. Okay, there's an art to seeing things positively. There's an art. When you see a story, you need to understand that sometimes you may not be seeing the full story. Right? It's an incredible, we've discussed this so many times, of how we have a limited perspective. We have a limited perspective. We only see what our eyes show us. And sometimes our eyes even trick us. But that's it we see. We don't see what's behind the curtain. And today we're going to learn a little bit. We'll get a little bit of an insight. Maybe next week we'll have to overlap and talk a little bit more, overflow onto next week, of learning tricks of how to see the full story. I want to just share with you one amazing story that I saw this week. Okay? I wasn't even preparing for this class yet. Right? I was sitting at a friend's house, and there was a book there on the couch. I opened up the book, and boom, I said, this has to be a message from God. Because God knew we were talking about judging people favorably. And the first story I opened up to in the amazing book by Rabbi Pesach Krohn was about not judging other people. Okay? Don't judge other people, because you don't know what's really going on. So, here's the story. This was in a summer camp. In a summer camp, you know, every summer camp, especially the sleepaway camps where children go for the whole summer or for 4 weeks, so they have one day in the middle of the month, which is called Visiting Day. Now, Visiting Day is a very exciting day. I know my daughter went to sleepaway camp last year for the first time, and there was a lot of talk about that Visiting Day. It's so important because parents have to go and see their kids bunk, and they meet their friends, and you take them, you know, people have different customs of what they do on that very, very special day. So one of the things you'll notice when you go to these camps is that because so many people come to visit their kids, they don't have enough parking for all those. So they usually have everyone park in a very organized fashion, on in the baseball field or the soccer field, and they have all these ushers guiding people, park here and you park here and you park here, and they have people with flags and cones and all these things. Okay. But generally speaking, they don't want cars driving all around the campus. They don't want people just going all over the place. So they're very, very strict about it to make sure that they keep it organized. People can come in and go out in a safe and easy way. So in this specific summer camp that Rabbi Krohn writes about, there was a car that pulled up that was very, very different from all the other cars. It was a stretched limo. Stretched limo pulls up into camp, and not only that, to what the viewers perceived, was this person coming in this extravagant car to stand out, but this person pulls up on the grass, goes all the way to the bunkhouses, and then parks right in front of the bunkhouses. Chutzpah, right? Everyone is flagging. Everyone is flagging to go this way, and he just keeps on going however he wants to go. So the children were in the lunchroom at the time, and the children look and they say, "You see, when you have money, you don't have to listen to any rules." So the rabbi, after the day's events were over, called a big assembly and said, "I need to tell everyone what really happened here, because we need to learn a lesson in judging people favorably." There were 2 campers in that camp whose father was terminally ill and was bedridden, wasn't able to move, and certainly not able to visit his children in camp. But one of his friends arranged to have a hospital bed set up inside a limousine so that the father can go see his kids on visiting day. Now, of course, he couldn't leave his bed. So they called up to the camp office and asked for special permission to take that limousine all the way to the bunkhouses so that he can make his children happy. And, their father's going through such a challenging time. And at least from the bed in the limousine, he can look into their bunkhouse. And they could be so happy that their father's there. An amazing story. I
just jumped to the conclusion and say, don't
well,
have
course,
Trump, right?
That's the lesson. That's what we're here for tonight, is because we jump to conclusions before we know the whole story. Yeah. Now, of course, sometimes we jump to conclusion. We say, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed. How can I have jumped to such a conclusion?" Well, here's my question. Why does the Mishnah tell us you shall judge favorably? Shouldn't the Mishnah say even better? The Mishnah should say much easier. Don't judge. Right? Don't judge. Why is the Mishnah telling us judge favorably?
Because we're going to judge anyway.
Oh, because the Mishnah is telling you can't change the reality of humanity. And the reality is we're judges. Every single one of us are judges. And things we see, we judge. Things we hear, we judge. So the Mishnah is teaching us, you're going to be a judge anyway, but you have to learn how to judge favorably.
Yeah.
Yes?
Does that have anything to do with judging yourself favorably?
Yes, so we'll talk about that soon, okay? But the focus that we want to get into first is our eyes are seeing outside, right?
That's it.
And we have to learn to judge favorably. Okay? So now, what are the tools that the Mishnah gives us to learn how to judge favorably? Okay, so there are we're going to share a bunch of stories throughout the evening, but there are a couple of tools that we could use to teach us to judge favorably. Okay? So the first thing is like this. Judging favorably, we have to realize that there are 3 different types of people. There are 3 different types of people. There are people who are righteous people. These are people who don't do bad things. They don't have evil intentions. And they want to do the right thing always. So such people, it's not so difficult because we know they want to do the right thing always. And they always do the right thing. So when the picture doesn't seem clear to us, we can assume they did the right thing. I'll give you an example. Anybody here have a father? We all have a father. And hopefully, right, we all had a father at some point. Hopefully we'll have fathers, those of us who have, to 120. But anybody who would insult my father, right, what would I immediately say? They just don't understand. They didn't have the full story. Oh, I know your father. He's a thief. I know your father. Well, you don't know the story, right? Right. If someone came over to us and say, I saw your father take a hammer and break someone's window, what do we jump to conclusion? Not that he's a vandal, right? He's not, right? What do we say? I bet you he was trying to save someone's life. Because we know that someone who's always doing good, we can only judge him favorably. Correct? So there's not much of a challenge with that. Someone who's completely evil, right? Oh, you know why they're breaking that window? Because they damage everything they touch. Right? Someone who we don't, generally speaking, the Chafetz Chaim, when talking about the laws of Lashon Hara, he says when you hear something negative about someone else, he says, imagine that person's your father. Would you accept it so easily? Of course not. Right? Suddenly, right, you get very defensive if it's your own flesh and blood. You get defensive. Why? There's just an interesting psychology about this, is because we associate ourselves with our parents, even if we don't love them so much, even if they weren't so great to us. That's who we come from. That's who we come from. So in a way, we want to protect them, because by protecting them, we're protecting ourselves. So I don't want to accept that I'm bad. I don't want to accept that someone I love very much, or loves me very much, or someone who I have some type of connection with as being a parent of mine would do something terrible. Right? We don't want to believe such a thing. So we immediately judge them favorably. Even if we don't know the story. We'll assume a story. But we don't love every person like we love a parent, or like we love a child, or like we love a sibling. Right? A person, it's amazing. Siblings can fight day and night, but when someone else attacks our sibling, that's when, right? That's when we go to war. Right? You don't insult my brother like that. You don't insult my sister like that, right?
But Rabbi, judge favorably, it's not only for the ones who we know that they do only good.
Oh, one second, we'll get there, right? So then that's category number one of people. People who we know are good. Okay? So then it's not so difficult to judge favorably. Then you have people who are not so good, or considered rishaim, or evil people. And then it's not so difficult because, generally speaking, they do evil things. So it's not so difficult. We understand that they do. But what's about the people in the middle? The Benonim, that they're called. The people in the middle. What's about them? So on them, the Mishnah tells us, we have to be machri'o lekaf zechut. Imagine the scales are even. Okay, so you have, 50 pounds of good deeds, 50 pounds of not so good deeds. Right? So how do I judge them? Do I judge them as positive, or do I judge them negatively? Our sages say, put him to the side of a favorable leaning. Push down that side. Think in your mind of something positive. Okay? Us as judges, number one, we established, we're judges, period. We're judging. Okay, so don't try to run away from saying, I'm not judging people. You're a judge. Now that you're a judge, you have to learn how to judge favorably.
Even if you don't say it, you're thinking.
Correct.
That's very interesting, because the Christian perspective will say don't judge.
Yes.
Well, okay, but there's another Mishnah that says, very interestingly, it says, don't judge your fellow till you're standing in their place. Al tadun et chavercha ad shetagia lemkomo. Right? Because you don't know their full situation. That means, okay, in that case, and we'll see that a little bit further, we don't always understand the full picture. It means if you're going to judge, you have to get the full picture. And we don't always know the full picture. Like that limousine. We think, oh, look at the snob. Huh, riding on the grass, going wherever he wants, doesn't obey any laws. And meanwhile, we hear that the story is very, very different. Right? So you have to see a full picture. The problem is, if you don't see the full picture, what are you basing your judgment on? Okay? Now, we'll see this right away. Okay. So again, a righteous person must be judged favorably. An evil person, you can always assume that there were ulterior motives. But an average person, it is meritorious to give the benefit of the doubt. That's what we're trying to do. Give the benefit of the doubt. Okay? So we know that it's very, very important for us as individuals, first for ourselves. Okay? There's an obligation to avoid questionable actions. Okay? Don't put yourself in a situation where someone can judge you inappropriately. Okay? Stay clear of questionable actions. So if you're going to a place which is not such a great place and people who are seen in that place are generally of a certain kind, right? You say, oh, well, you don't know why I'm going. You're not always going to get a chance to do that. You're not always going to have people come to you and say, you know what? People are asking questions and people don't know. You're not going to have that always. People are just going to make judgments and goodbye. You lost a friendship, you lost a relationship, you lost a business deal, you lost in many different areas because people judge. People do judge. You're not always going to have the benefit of the doubt being shown upon you. So for us, the first tool is avoid questionable actions. Don't do things that people can perceive as being negative. Be in the righteous, and be strongly in the righteous. Okay, the example that we've discussed numerous times is that the Gabbai tzedakah, the person who collects the charity in the synagogue, right? He shakes around the pushka, goes around. He shouldn't change that money out of his own pocket. Why? Because it's going to be perceived by people in a negative way. Oh, he's mixing his own money, he's taking out, even if it's people, you know what? Some people will even say it as a joke, but they really mean it. They can really mean it. It's a very scary thing for a person to have, being judged, and we're all being judged. Right? Yes?
Should I care?
Yes, of course you should care.
If I'm the Gabbai and I know what
absolutely you
I
should
have to care.
You have to care because it's not a good thing for people to have a perception about you which isn't correct. It doesn't mean we're running around all day suing people who have incorrect perspective of us.
I have to live the way I think is correct.
Yeah.
Correct, but don't put out extra. There's enough judgment coming our way, negative judgment coming our way. We don't need to give them any help, right? Stay away. Avoid questionable situations. Avoid questionable situations.
But one last thought.
Sure.
Your questionable might not be the same as my question.
Right. So again, you have to know your environment. 100%. You're right. The questionable is different for each individual, but you have to know your environment. Right? What do people say? You live in a modest neighborhood, and one guy buys a Lamborghini. So what do people say? What do people say?
He's showing off.
Right. First is what a show off. Or they say, who did he steal that from? Right. What deal? People just say things, but how can we avoid negative judgment on ourselves? And it's a very important thing. Now, how many of us have ever been in a major rush, even an emergency, and we drive in a crazy way because we have to rush to a hospital, God forbid, or to a doctor, or a very, very, very important meeting? There's a lot of, right? So sometimes, right? And what do we say to ourselves in the back of our mind? What do we say? I'm sure everybody understands. I'm sure they know that I'm not really like this, and right? Really? Do they know? Do they know? How do we know that they know? We have no idea that they know. Right? But when someone else does it, we say, what's wrong with that person? He's crazy. Look at him. Right? Again, we're ready to give ourselves that positive judgment, but are we ready to extend that to other people? Okay? So it's a very, very interesting, okay, now there's another thing, aside from the Gabbai Tzedakah, there's another thing is you're not supposed to get into is a concept in the Talmud called Mar'it Ayin, all right, which is avoid all appearance of questionable actions. So for example, I'll give you a very common example that's discussed in many, many different halachic sources, and today it's a little bit different, of course, but imagine this, okay? Someone keeps kosher. Are they allowed to go they're stopping in the highway at one of these stops, they need to fill up gas. Can they go into the McDonald's to use the restroom? Because someone from the outside who may see this Jew walking in with a kippah, right, saying, look at him walking into McDonald's like that. He thinks nobody sees him, right? He's just going to use the restroom. Yeah, but people... So the question is, are you allowed to do something like that where it may be perceived as inappropriate? Are you allowed to do that? So again, it really depends on the circumstances. But today it's a very common thing. For example, what's everyone's favorite stop on the drive to Austin? Buc-ee's. Very good. Does Buc-ee's sell kosher food? No, but they also sell enough kosher food that would be okay. There's plenty of kosher food you can get. You can get all the soda, most of the sodas are kosher, the coffees, and so on and so forth. Plus, it's a restroom. Plus, it's a gas station. So no, you're not assuming that someone is going in there. And today it's more and more common, right? But typically speaking, if there are other options. If there are other options in other places, you go into the mall, do you have to go to use the restroom in one of the non-kosher restaurants? There are other options. Perhaps it's a better thing to use one of the different options. Okay, so that people don't have any questionable, perspectives. Okay, but here's I want to share with you a few stories that really can help illustrate this in a much better way. And sometimes we feel so dumb not having seen the true stories. I have to share with you one of the stories. I was actually reading this to my children tonight when they were gone. I was putting them to sleep before coming here tonight. So there's this young married man. Actually, when he got engaged, he was very excited because he heard so much about this girl. She does tremendous kindness, and all he wanted to do in his life was to be a person of kindness. And now he's about to get married to this young woman, and she's all about kindness, and he's so excited they're going to build a house of kindness together. Okay. So now it's 2 or 3 years later, and she had to go one evening. I guess she was going with friends, and he stayed home to be with his 8-month-old baby. So she says as she's walking out, "Oh, by the way, if the baby cries, just give him a bottle. Just give him a bottle." Okay. So, of course, what happens? Baby starts crying. Opens up the refrigerator to fill up the bottle with milk, and there's no milk. And what does he immediately think to himself? I mean, what is so difficult to just have a bottle of milk in the house at all times, right? Why does there have to be no bottle of milk? Right? Is that so complicated? We can all do that. It's not so complicated. So he gets irritated like you can't imagine. He's like, I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. Right? So what is he going to do now? He's going to be there shaking the baby for the next 2 hours, till the baby, instead of having a bottle of milk, he could have made it so easy, right? Why did there have to be no milk? He says, you know what? I'm going to go to the upstairs neighbor. Again, they're in an apartment building. Right? Go to the upstairs neighbor. I'm going to ask the upstairs neighbor for milk. Goes to the upstairs neighbor. Knocks on the door with the baby. He says, if you don't mind, would you have an extra carton of milk? They said, oh, we're so sorry. We ran out of milk today, and we came down to your wife, and we borrowed a bottle of milk. We're so sorry we didn't get a chance to return it. Here's a bottle of milk. So, okay. He figured, you know what, let me try another. He goes downstairs to the downstairs neighbor. Right, so, sorry, the upstairs neighbor didn't have the bottle of milk to return them, so they go to the downstairs neighbor. The downstairs neighbor says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Earlier today we needed a carton of milk. We didn't have. We went upstairs and borrowed from your wife a carton of milk, and we didn't get a chance to return it yet. Here's the bottle of milk." Right? 2 cartons of milk. All right? Imagine how he felt. Right? We sometimes rush to judgment. Not knowing, and sometimes it's the people we love most, but it's because of ourselves. We are judges. It's an amazing thing. Why does someone judge someone negatively? Why do we judge someone
To
negatively?
build yourself up.
In a way, sometimes it's to build ourselves up.
I once read, I forget where,
That
that most of our thoughts the monkey thoughts that just keep are negative.
are negative. Most of our thoughts are negative. Why?
I don't know, I can't answer it.
That's true. I would say
What?
that would be true.
I think it's a combination of things.
Yeah, there could be a lot of reasons why somebody does that.
It's a combination of things. There are many things, but I think many times it could be just a negative reflection on ourselves
Yeah.
in a very scary way, right? We are hurting ourselves with our negative judgment. David, what's the matter? You're uncomfortable with this.
Well, a little bit, but I don't know, the example you gave me, right? Why would the wife tell the guy that if the baby cries, give him a bottle of milk when she don't have any milk?
She didn't remember that she lent it out. She lent out 2 cartons of milk that day.
Well,
She didn't
okay.
remember, right? You know, she's running out. Oh, just better give him a bottle.
Well, they were supposed to return it. And they,
But
Again,
he doesn't know that.
But again, there's so many things that happen to us during the day. You remember every single thing, right? Sometimes we forget things, right? And sometimes it's, you know, here's the thing. I think that there's a little bit of a source of arrogance to it.
Sorry.
Well, I'll tell you, in a way, it's like, I would never, if I was in that situation, I would do a better job. If I was running the house, I would always have, right? Not putting ourselves into someone else's shoes is the challenge. Like we said in the Mishnah. It's not putting ourselves into their shoes that makes it a challenge to judge them favorably. So if we just had that strength to get out of our own arrogance and get into someone else's shoes, think about what their situation is. I want to share with you, the Talmud says an interesting story. There was once an employer. The employer owed money. The Talmud says the story. The employer owed money to his employee. So the employee, he comes, he says, you know, when can I get my paycheck? He says, I'm sorry, I lost all of my money. Lost it all. He says, what's about your cattle? He says, well, my cattle is actually, it's not mine. I know you think it's mine, but it's not really mine. He says, and what's with all your pillows and blankets? No, he says that doesn't belong to me either. He's like giving him all these stories, all these Baba Mises, right? So and the guy just okay, he doesn't have, fine. He walks away and leaves. A few weeks later, this employer fills up his wagons and says and fills his wagons with all these goods and goes to his former employee's house. I think it's in the upper gallery he was talking about, the Talmud. And before he tells him anything, before he gives him anything, he says to him, you know, you asked me for money, I told you I didn't have any money, what did you think? He said, I figured that you must have loaned it out to someone. when I told you that I didn't have any property, what did you think? He says, I figured that you donated it to the temple. And when I told you that I didn't have any animals, what did you think? I figured that you leased it out to someone. And when I told you, when you asked me for all my pillows and blankets and other possessions, what did you think? He said, I figured that it got lost or it got burned or something. Like, he says, you know something? You're right on every single one of them. You are right in exactly every single one of them. Exactly what you thought it was. You made up a story in your mind, right? That's actually indeed what happened. And he says, I did give this to that. He told him that each one of them was right. But now that they're all back, I wanted to pay you properly. And he gives him his whole wagon full with all of these things for judging him favorably, for paying him and for judging him favorably. So I learned something from this. And what I learned from this is that sometimes go out on a limb and make up a story. Because 9 out of 10 times you might be right.
Oh my gosh.
I'll tell you my own story. Right? I've shared this story recently. I don't remember what class this was in. But this is a true story that happened to me. Now, I had given a class on judging people favorably approximately 24 years ago. It was in high school, what they call in Israel Yeshiva Ktana. And we had little groups. We put together Mussar groups. And we did a rotation who spoke about different topics. And my topic fell out on judging people favorably. So I did a lot of research on it back then. And I learned up a lot about it. And I gave a whole presentation about it. One of the things I said was, come up with a story. If you don't have a positive way to judge, come up with one. Be creative. But come up, make up a story. You might be right.
You gotta be kidding me.
I gotta be kidding you. So this is the story. So
Story.
just that week, okay, Friday night, I walk into synagogue, all right? And it was packed, jam-packed. So I managed to find a sitter on one of the shelves, the last one, and there's not really much room to sit in any of the seats. So I'm standing on the side, and he's singing Lecha Dodi, right? So I open up my sitter, it's on the shelf, and I'm humming along Lecha Dodi with everyone, walking back and forth, and my sitters open up to the place. It's not like I'm 30 feet away, I'm like 4 feet away from my, just walking, strolling back and forth like people do in synagogue, they just stroll back and forth, singing the beautiful tune, welcoming the Shabbos queen. Guy walks in, rushed, takes the sitter and walks off with it. I'm like, I'm right here. It's not like, what's so difficult? Takes the sitter, walks off with it. I said, okay. I guess he didn't realize that it was my sitter. So now there are no sitters left, right? So I take out a chumash. I said, at least, I know the prayers by heart, but if I don't have a sitter to pray from, at least let me, look over the parsha. I'll be able to think of some idea to talk over at the Shabbos table. So I open up the chumash, I open up to that week's portion, and I'm looking at a verse. Again, we're singing Lecha Dodi, and we're going back and forth, and I'm walking. This guy walks over, takes the chumash, and walks back to it. I was like, right? Now, twice is not a coincidence, right? What's going on? Oh, don't judge. You just gave a class this week about judging favorably, right? You can't judge. So what am I going to do now? So I'm going to come up with a story. I came up with a story. I said, you know what?
To use your imagination.
Amuse your imagination however you want. Just come up with a story. So I came up with a story that, his wife just had a baby a few minutes before Shabbat. He's all confused, ran home from the hospital. Now they have a Shalom Zachar in their house, which is a party when if you have a baby boy born the first Friday night, they have a special party at the house. He's all confused, doesn't even know where he is. He doesn't realize that it's someone else's sitter. Yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah.
So, that's my story. Okay, and I finished there, and I'm not upset at him. I'm not angry, nothing, no problem. Whatever he wants, whatever he says, I don't care. That's my story, and I'm sticking with
Rabbi,
it.
when we do
Sure enough, at the end of services, he walks over to the Gabbai, makes the announcements to the president, whoever it was, and he whispers something in his ear. He says, "Oh, we get a big mazel tov. This and this person, his wife had a baby a few minutes before Shabbos.
Oh my.
And he just rushed here, and there's going to be a Shalom Zechut at his house tonight. It's this and this address." And of course, I was so excited because, I came out with the most outlandish reason, and guess what? I was right. Right? So I think sometimes we have special divine inspiration to come up with a story. As crazy as it may sound, it might be the right one. But the idea is to start thinking in a positive way. Because people aren't evil. Or most people aren't evil. Right?
Yeah.
Most people aren't evil. At least the people who hang around here are not evil. Right? So if someone sits in your seat, David, right?
Right.
So what do you say to yourself? Oh, they intentionally wanted to take my seat. No. They didn't know. They're tired. Whatever it is. You come up with a story. Who cares? Right? You come up with a story and stick with it. Right?
Doesn't matter if it's true or not.
It doesn't matter if it's true or not.
It's
The
just a
idea,
way- it's a play-
the
playing
idea
with yourself.
is you're trying to train yourself to think positively about other
Is
people.
that,
like
is that
a
going to
game
go
you're
over
playing with
okay?
yourself.
Exactly.
Is that going to go over okay in your marriage class?
It should. It's sure better. It sure.
So I could just make up stories.
Well, again,
Don't even.
okay, you're sleeping in the woodshed tonight.
Because
Yes.
when we
saying, right?
have just basically a lot of negative thought of anybody, say, and that's what I'm saying, oh, he's so rude. Does that mean that reflects on me, that I'm the rude person?
Sometimes, because the Mishnah tells us a very frightening. The Talmud tells us in tractate, I believe it's tractate Nida 70a. It says a very, very frightening thing. It says, "Kol haposel b'mumo posel." When I see a negative in someone else, it's really a reflection of my own deficiency.
Sometimes.
When I
No.
More
It's called
so.
projection.
So you're
Not
getting,
always.
you're getting some pushback.
No,
I-
not always.
we had this. We had this.
Well-
I mean,
and
I had brought up the fact that it pains me to see when someone hurts an animal.
Right.
Right.
That doesn't mean that I go around hurting animals, or I know someone who does.
Right. But sometimes, true. But again, like this, the idea is like this: when we are criticizing people, it's usually an indication of a flaw that we possess. So when we get upset that someone else is angry, it's usually because we see that anger in ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's pushing our button. Because otherwise, we would be completely immune to that. There are plenty of flaws. Okay, okay. Honest. Let's be honest here. Okay. Moment of honesty. Okay. Do we agree that we all have flaws?
Oh,
Okay,
of
except
course.
for you, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's got flaws.
Rabbi.
Okay, we've all got flaws. So now. Okay. No, I'm serious. We all have qualities, tremendous
So
qualities.
lucky, Susan.
But you know what? We also have flaws. We also have flaws. So now, if someone sees my flaw, they see a flaw of mine. Why did they see that flaw and not a different flaw that I have? So if I have 10 major flaws in my character, why did they have to see that one?
You might be accentuating that.
But I have 10. I have 9 other ones.
But
They could have seen the 9 other ones.
It might
But
be a flaw that really annoys somebody.
why does it
else.
annoy them?
Because they might find it objectionable behavior.
No, that's
Absolutely.
not why. I'll
No,
tell you
I
why.
disagree.
I'll tell you why.
That
Some of
flaw
this.
in
Because
yourself.
you have that flaw in
Not
yourself.
necessarily.
Well, our
Not
sages tell us
necessarily.
yes. Our sages tell us yes.
I
So,
disagree.
that's fine. You're allowed to. You're allowed to.
I mean, it can't be the case. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to
Psychologically,
say it's
also
never.
true.
But
Then
it's
what
not-
again?
Psychologically,
It's not
it's
always-
also true.
But it's
What do you
just-
think?
Not always true.
So generally speaking,
Yeah.
all right. The reason why we see certain flaws is because it's an indication of something inside that's triggering it,
And generally, the more.
and that's why we see it.
Generally, the more angry I get, the more I have that flaw in myself.
Well, of what you see in that other person.
I mean,
Correct.
If I really overreact, that means that I'm judging myself,
Correct.
and I'm dumping it on that guy.
Right. So look, there's a lot of things that we see, and we are judging, and we have to be very, very careful because many times, look, We don't want to be judged negatively. Okay, is there anybody here who wants to be judged? We all know how dishonest you are, right? We all know how this. What are you talking? Me? What are you talking about? Right? No. I heard the story. Yeah, but it's not true. Where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And that's it. And people walk away. No. Right? If we had such a situation, we don't want to be judged like that. Yes.
Well, a lot of times people will judge me as I was when I was like 30 years old.
So it's a totally other thing. It's a very important point.
Now I'm
It's a
older.
very important point because sometimes people don't realize. It says about a righteous person that if you see a righteous person doing a sin at night, you can assume that by the next morning they already repented. You're not allowed to think that they're sinners. Why? I once had a story about someone who said something very, very, very inappropriately. And this person called them up and said to them a little bit later, and called them up and said to them, the Chavetz Chaim says in his teachings about Lashon Hara that if someone says something which is out of character, don't assume that they really meant it.
Did he meant it?
What?
No.
He said it, right? It turned out that the person said it and regretted it so terribly that for the next several hours till that person called, they were crying, sad, remorseful, begging forgiveness because they said something which was inappropriate, something which didn't reflect their character properly. And it's something, so you see that they really didn't mean it. They really didn't mean it, even though they said it. If someone is truly righteous, even if you see them do it, you can assume by the next morning they already repented. Because they didn't do it. So that's a whole another aspect. So that even if I know the person, you're telling me they didn't do it, I saw them walk into the place, I saw them eat it, right? So there's a story which is told about this man is walking in Manhattan, and he sees this member of his congregation, a very prominent member of his congregation, walk over to one of these non-kosher stands, order a non-kosher food, and eat it right there. This is not like, it's like, well, he didn't know that, right? It's like he very clearly went over and ate this non-kosher food. So he goes to the rabbi. He says, I think you should throw this guy out of the synagogue. I mean, he's a double. He's coming here being all righteous, saying that he's such a holy person, and then he goes out and we see him eating in the streets. So the rabbi's like, you saw him eating this, right? You saw him. He says, yes. So he calls he says you have to judge him favorably. How can I judge him favorably? Right? I see him going and eating this thing. He says, what person would go eat something like that? What person would go eat something like that? A God-fearing Jew. What God-fearing Jew would do something like that? So you have two conclusions you can get. Either he's not a God-fearing Jew, or maybe there was something there. Maybe he had diabetes, right? And he was at a life and death situation. He had to eat. And in such a case of life and death, it doesn't make a difference.
Right.
And that's indeed what it was. The rabbi pulled that individual aside. He said, is everything okay? He said, I had an attack today. You can't even imagine. I was, right? He was going to die. He had no choice. You have to judge people. You never know what's going on. You see it with your own eyes. You still don't know the full story. So let me share with you a few stories. Okay?
Interesting.
So, there was a great sage, his name was Rav Bunim. And Rav Bunim, two people came over to the Bet Din, to the rabbinic authority in that city, and said, we saw Rav Bunim eating cake and drinking coffee on Yom Kippur. Two people, two witnesses. They said, we saw Rav Bunim eating cake and drinking coffee on Yom Kippur. Of course, they knew Rav Bunim was a righteous Jew, Can't just be. Can't just be. So they asked Rabbunim, is it possible that you ate? He said, God forbid I didn't eat. So what do they see? He says, I'll tell you. My daughter-in-law had a baby right before Yom Kippur. And the doctors told her she has to eat on Yom Kippur. And she was unwilling to eat unless I fed it to her. He said, so indeed people saw me holding cake, but they didn't see that I didn't eat it. Right? So he took the piece of cake and fed it to his daughter-in-law, because that's the only way she would agree to eat it on Yom Kippur. If her great father-in-law, right, who was such a righteous Jew, if he fed it to her, that would be the only way she would allow herself to eat it on Yom Kippur. Right? So here these people see him with a piece of cake in his hand, right? There, he has to be eating. We don't always see the full picture. Right? Because we generally see someone with a piece of cake in their hand, they're eating it. Right? That's immediately we judge, we run to judgment. So there's an interesting, funny story. This woman was once on an airplane, and she sees the lady next to her with an incredibly beautiful diamond ring. Incredibly beautiful. Like the most magnificent diamond you've ever seen. So she says to her, that's a really nice diamond ring you have. It's one of the most beautiful diamonds I've ever seen. So the lady turns to her and she says, yes, it's the famous Plotnik diamond.
Oh.
But it comes with a curse.
Mr. Blood.
Right. Really, really, what is it? He says, it's Mr. Plotnik. Right? So sometimes we see something, right? We see something and we don't know the full picture. You got to be so careful before you run to judgment. There's a story also that's told. What's that?
Okay.
Mr. Plotnik, right? The husband. She has to live with this guy, right? Often people judge others based on a limited knowledge of life circumstances. They see the external and assume all is well. Right? If one knew what was really happening, what would find out things are often not the way they look. Okay? So, just another interesting story about not judging till you know the full story. So, based on the prosecutor's complaint, that a boy named Ahmed Kadari, right, roughed up his 2-year-old neighbor, girl. Right, he roughed her up. And the judge sentenced the boy to 6 months in jail and instructed the prosecutor to have him arrested. Right? This is in Cairo, in Egypt.
Yeah.
You know what they didn't know? That boy who had roughed up that girl was 18 months old. Right? But they didn't know that fact. Right? Sometimes you hear the story. Did you hear? Did you hear what happened? So I'll tell you an interesting. There's a story that they say about the rabbi who stole the Torah scroll. Did you ever hear about that?
No.
You never heard the rabbi who stole the Torah scroll?
No.
You never heard of it?
Tell us.
I'll tell you the story. It's an incredible story. Did you hear the rabbi stole a Torah scroll?
No.
So they go like, no, what are you talking about? He said, I'm telling you, I saw the rabbi steal a Torah scroll. He says, you saw? He says, I didn't really see, but he saw. Right? He says, who's? He says, Joe. He goes to Joe. He says, Joe, you said that the rabbi stole a Torah scroll? He says, I never said such a thing. I said the rabbi's son stole a Torah scroll. He says, really? Who did you hear it from? He says, I heard it from so-and-so. So he goes to so-and-so. He says, you said that the rabbi's son stole a Torah scroll? He says, no, I never said such a thing. I said that the rabbi's son stole a Torah, not a scroll, a whole, you can go into an ark. And he stole a Torah, a book of the Torah. He says, really? Who did you see it yourself? He says, no, I heard it from this and the other guy. Goes to the other guy. He says, you said that the rabbi's son stole a Torah? He says, no, God forbid. I said he stole that idea from one of the commentaries in the Torah, right? Something, right? The problem is we judge, we jump to conclusion too quickly without knowing the full story. Yes.
So you're also saying that it's okay to judge after you get
The whole.
all the facts.
I say like this, okay? Going back to where we started off. Hevidan et kol ha'adam lekav zechut. It doesn't say judge every person. It says judge the entire person. Et kol ha'adam. That's the way the Mishnah says it, right? Judge the entire person. That means if you know this person is overwhelmingly positive, you can assume that even though this individual story looks like a negative, it's positive. Because you judge the whole person, not the individual situation.
Okay.
It's such an important rule.
Yeah.
You have to judge the entire person. If you're judging them, you can't isolate a story and say, oh, this is the person, he's evil.
Well, that's what a lot of people say, though. You know, it's like you were hiding this for all this time. And
You're really a
now your true self.
right. Now it came out.
Came out.
Yeah. Again, it's a big challenge. But if you can't put yourself into someone else's situation, if you can't really properly get deep into knowing, it's almost impossible for someone to know the true circumstances, the whole story. It's almost impossible. Even then, even if someone told you the whole story, you don't even know the whole story behind it. Right? There's still more behind it.
So you're saying you can't judge because you never find out the whole story.
Right. So then the only thing you're left with is judging the whole person. Right? So it says over here a story. It says about the. It says this father was always telling his children to turn off the light switches. Turn off the light switches. Right? You leave the room, turn off the lights. You're wasting money. Right? So, every time there was one switch that everybody was leaving open. You don't understand. Why is everyone... If you're not in that room, turn it off. One night, it was late at night, he was sitting with his wife, and they're talking in the living room. All the children are sleeping. And suddenly, they hear a switch. The switch goes on. So they get up quietly, they go, all the kids are sleeping, and they see the switch was broken. And the switch would fall and would turn on. Right? You can accuse them, you can say, oh, who's leaving it open? It was a broken switch. Very simple. But sometimes, again, we rush to judgment. Where it's like, oh, they're being negligent. They don't care about my money. They don't care. Got to be so careful about this. All right? Sometimes it's not such small stories. Sometimes it's very big stories. And sometimes people rush to judgment, and they don't want to do business with them. They don't want their children to get married to those people, not knowing. I know someone who sat in jail for 8 years for a crime he never did. True story. For a crime he never did. Why? Because there were going to be some terrible things that would have happened, right, to other people had he not taken that for them. Right? And you'd say to yourself, what? Justice, right? Person has to do what they think is right. Never did it. Just not to hurt someone else. So everybody looks, oh, look at this person. Right? To know the full story is sometimes it's seldom that we're able to know the entire story. You see things happening, you think, you see it all because my eyes, I know. All right, we'll continue more, we'll talk about this more a little bit next week.
Good class.
Any other questions before we turn off? To our friends out there, thank you so much for joining us.
Sometimes
Please like and share this video. And we're looking forward to sharing more videos with you, hopefully in the near future. I'm going to count the Omer now.
Sometimes if it got